The largest concentration camp of the Third Reich, operated by Nazi Germany, was Auschwitz. Inside the barbed wire fences, at least 1.1 million people were killed inside the gas chambers, and by violence inflicted upon the prisoners by the guards. The Commandant Rudolf Höss was later executed inside of the camp on a specially built gallows at Auschwitz for the reign of terror and hell that he instilled on the large complex. Guards were schooled in how to violently strike fear into the hearts of the prisoners, and infamous members of staff such as Gaza and Josef Kramer regularly took the lives of prisoners. It wasn't just a place of mass killing, but it was also a place of torture, and specifically there was one block which became incredibly feared. Block 11, found inside of Auschwitz I, was a brick building where horrific punishment and torture occurred inside. But what is the story of this? Join us today as we look at the horrific torture of Block 11 at Auschwitz, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Auschwitz itself originally began use as an army barracks, but over the Second World War it transitioned into the largest concentration camp inside of the Third Reich that was also the most deadly. Around 1.3 million prisoners were housed there, and the gas chambers each day were used and killed prisoners on a huge scale. Around every corner of the camp was death, starvation and suffering. Prisoners were forced to work rather hard and were given very little food in order to perform their daily jobs, and this led to large amounts of malnutrition. Many guards wanted prisoners to work until they simply dropped, but there were many more prisoners who did not even make it inside of the camp. When people were transported to Auschwitz, they had to undergo selection, where guards and doctors would choose which prisoners could enter the complex to work. Those who were deemed not fit enough or were too old or young to work successfully were taken straight to their deaths in the gas chambers. To maintain law and order in the camp, guards were told to be violent, and many took this to the point where they became murderers, and some would whip and beat prisoners to death regularly in front of others. Women such as Gaza and Johanna Bormann would use their dogs to terrorise prisoners, and were known for killing and maiming inmates with their animals. Guards also regularly shot inmates who weren't working well and were not being as productive as they could have been. Prisoners could easily be beaten for small infractions of the camp's rules, and many were killed for these. Inside of roll call yards, there was a large gallows in which seemingly almost daily executions would take place. At roll call, those who broke the rules or tried to escape would be brought out in front of thousands of prisoners, before they were then executed to send a message to others about not breaking the rules. Some guards even became known for their sadism by nicknames, for example the hyena of Auschwitz, or the woman with the dogs. With this there was great fear inside the prison population, and in particular there was one block which became known for its brutality with regards to punishment. Prisoners often were punished for breaking the rules, such as returning for second helpings of food at meal times, taking out their own gold teeth to barter to buy food and bread, stealing food from the kitchens, putting hands in their pockets, and some were even so desperate they stole food from the pigsties. There were floggings that were done in public at roll call, large whipping spectacles to terrorise prisoners. A flogging table known as a goat forced prisoners into a locked position, with their feet in a box while stretched over a table. Prisoners were then whipped by the guards and were forced to count the lashes. They were forced to shout, 25 received with many thanks. If they got the number wrong, the flogging began again from number 1. Prisoners were also punished by being tied to the posts with their hands behind their backs, with chains attached to hooks. They were then left to dangle by the wrists in the medieval-style manacles, but Block 11 was known for being the brutal punishment block where torture was also administered. Block 11 was the name of a brick-built building found inside of Auschwitz I, the main camp of the complex. It was a place where execution and torture took place, as between Block 10 and 11 stood the Auschwitz death wall, the site where many prisoners faced the firing squads. Inside of Block 11 were a number of different torture chambers and punishment blocks used to obtain information and inflict pain and suffering onto the prisoners. Inmates were interrogated inside Block 11 under extreme torture. There were many different devices and methods used within the walls of the building to extract information. One of these was a boga swing, and this was used inside of the block. It was said of this device, invented by guard Wilhelm Boga, that it was a metre-long iron bar, suspended by chains hung from the ceiling. A prisoner would be brought in for questioning, stripped naked and then bent over the bar, wrists manacled to ankles. A guard at one side would shove him or her off across the chamber in a long, slow arc, whilst Boga would ask questions, at first quietly, then barking them out, and at the last bellowing. At each return, another guard, armed with a crowbar, would smash the victim across the buttocks. As the swinging went on, and the wailing victim fainted, was revived only to faint howling again, the blows continued, until only a mass of bleeding pulp hung before their eyes. Most perished from the ordeal, some sooner, some later. In the end, a sack of bones and flayed flesh and fat was swept along the shambles of that concrete floor, to be dragged away. Boga himself was known for overseeing terrible crimes inside of the block, but was never executed for his role in the punishment at Auschwitz. Inside of Block 11, it was here where first attempts and experiments to kill and exterminate people and prisoners using Zyklon B were made in September 1941. As the final solution ramped up, the guards tried different ways of killing prisoners, and Zyklon B became the method inside of the gas chambers that was used to kill hundreds of thousands. It was inside of this block where this was first tried, and Commandant Rudolf Höss personally watched the trials, and his guards oversaw the first killing of Russian prisoners of war in the basement of Block 11. They continued to use Block 11 to repeat the experiment on more Russian POWs, and Höss would watch the killings, but Block 11 itself became unsuitable as the basement was difficult to wear out following the killings, as there was not much ventilation, and also the crematorium to dispose of the bodies was a fair way away, so with this gas chambers were made with crematoria next to them. So Block 11 was used also as a prototype gas chamber. Many of the prisoners of Block 11 were people who were suspected of being involved in defiance or resistance at Auschwitz. Because of this, they were interrogated and tortured in different ways, from beatings and being maimed to being thrown into the specialised torture cells of Block 11. The Stehrbunker, or the standing cells, were an oubliette-style dungeon or cell inside of Block 11 that was used to punish inside of Auschwitz. There were 4 standing cells at Auschwitz in the basement of Block 11, and they measured around 1 square yard, and inside here 4 prisoners were crammed in, and they were only able to stand. This was horrendous, and almost like an oubliette-style dungeon found in a castle, where prisoners could not sit up or rest. They were kept in one standing cramped condition for periods of up to 10 days. Some prisoners were allowed to go to work before they were then locked back in the standing cells again, but there was very minimal air, and there was only a 2-inch opening for air to come in, which meant that prisoners did not suffocate, but also that air was in a very short supply. One survivor of the cells spoke at the Auschwitz trial about how he was forced into the standing cells of Block 11 for 6 weeks, and was given just 3 small meals during this time, and he noted that one prisoner was so hungry inside the cells that he even ate his own shoes. Rudolf Höss stated that the standing cells were only used for 3 nights punishment, but this was not the case, and it was his successor, Arthur Lieber Henschel, who removed the standing cells of Block 11 in 1943. The prisoners who were housed in Block 11 were usually interrogated and then sentenced to death to be hanged or shot. In the first years of the camp, many prisoners assigned to the harshest of labour were imprisoned here, and many Polish priests were also housed inside the block. To begin with, the Sonderkommando, the groups of prisoners forced to burn bodies, were housed there, but then police prisoners were held, and these were those suspected of being involved in resistance. There were many prisoners who were killed inside of Block 11 by starvation, including those who were sentenced to death by starvation, meaning they were simply left in a cell to just starve and rot. But one of the most brutal parts of Block 11 was what was found outside in a courtyard between the block and also Block 10. Just in the yard at the side was a death wall. This was a concrete reinforced wall, which was where a firing squad would execute many prisoners. The condemned were taken from their cells in Block 11 to the death wall, where they were stood against the wall before an SS firing squad would shoot them dead. Thousands of prisoners were shot against the wall, and the SS men took the lives of many Polish prisoners and those suspected of resistance activity. Also, death sentences were carried out on the death wall of people who were brought inside of the camp to be killed. Many hostages who were detained in reprisal for Polish resistance activities in towns and cities nearby were taken to Auschwitz and were then killed next to Block 11. The death wall was dismantled in 1944, but today a reconstruction stands. Also, prisoners were flogged and tied to the post in this yard next to Block 11. So Block 11 was the feared torture and punishment block of the deadliest concentration camp of the Second World War. It was greatly feared and was used as a Gestapo headquarters to inflict interrogation and brutality onto prisoners. Using devices such as a boga swing or the standing cells, it became a place where no one wanted to be, and because of this it was considered the death block of Auschwitz. It was just one part of the horrific concentration camp system, and was just a small part of the horror and terror of Auschwitz that prisoners had to deal with on a daily basis. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.